I always thought of China's youth as smart and hardworking, but then I came across this movement.
China's youth have embraced a silent revolution called Banan,
Bailon.
which means let it rot.
I remember from my history classes the last time a youth movement in China got big.
In April 1989, thousands of students gathered in Tiananmen Square to peacefully protest government corruption. In the early hours of June 4th, CCP soldiers opened fire on them. Protesters were shot, crushed by tanks, or later imprisoned.
I've spent the past few weeks investigating this movement, Banan, and I found a very different layer to China. A country with an overeducated youth that can't find work, a culture where you work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, a demographic of men that can't find a wife and will never buy a house. In this video, we're going to show you what this movement Banan is and the 5 underlying reasons why the Chinese youth are just letting it rot. Banan, translated literally, means let it rot. It refers to a mindset of not caring anymore. You passively accept a deteriorating situation rather than actively seeking improvement. In the West, if the youth disagree with something, they like to be loud about it. They hold a protest, they bring out the megaphones, they have their signs, and they make sure everyone knows their grievances. In China, they can't exactly do this. I've already referred to the last time young people try to hold a major protest. So they have to find another way. They have to go about things in a more silent manner. They have to use humor to disguise their message. They have to use the internet, but not in an obvious way. And this fits perfectly with Banan. Memes such as these ones started popping up all around Chinese social media. Hundreds of millions of interactions were amassed on social media like Weibo, China's version of Facebook. The youth resonated with this message, and I'm about to show you why.
Banan basically say no to the system. I will not cooperate. This is something I think should worry Chinese leadership much more. It's a part of rebellion. It's part of say no to the government.
You may have seen other versions of Banan before. The Lying Flat movement and the rise of the rat people all essentially come from the same idea. We're giving up because we've lost hope. The question is, why are China's youth giving up? When you get to know what's happening in China, you will totally understand why. Imagine you are a young man in China today. You spent the last 4 years of your life studying extremely hard to get your degree. Late nights, early mornings, don't forget 200,000 yuan paid in college fees, and we won't mention the other costs that come with it too. After all of this hard work, time and money, you finally get what you wanted. That piece of paper that proves you've graduated. With an education like this, you should be able to get your dream job at the click of the fingers. So you apply for one position, you don't get hired. So you apply for another, still don't get hired. So you apply for a few more, but still no job. After applying for hundreds of jobs and no luck, you're left with the choice to either go unemployed or accept a low-paying job that didn't require an education anyway. You become a food delivery driver, or laborer, or factory worker, or cleaner. Would you be happy if this happened to you? If you think this is a rare occurrence, you are sadly mistaken. This is the situation that many of China's youth are facing. China produces 10 million university graduates annually, one of the highest rates of grads in the world. The job market cannot absorb all of these graduates, especially as the economy slows down. So many graduates either don't get a job or they get a job that's completely unrelated to their field of study. This is a big issue in China, but this is just one of the many problems that has caused China's youth to simply let it rot. Let's get into the other 4 because these kind of get worse and worse. In China, they have a completely different way of life than the Western world. In the West, we have this concept called work-life balance. You work hard during the day, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, but you still have time outside of work to relax and spend time with family. In China, this concept does not exist. Not really. It's more you just work, and then you rest only so that you have enough energy to work again the next day. The Chinese white-collar workers live what's called the 9-9-6. They start work at 9 a.m., they finish at 9 9 p.m. They go home, make food, and then sleep so that they can do it all again the next day. They do this 6 days a week and then rest on Sundays. The work often is not easy in factories, construction, or tedious office work. While this is not the situation for every Chinese worker, it is still common, especially in the tech industry. As a young Chinese man, even if you do get the privilege of finding a job in the area you graduated in, your youth will be spent doing one thing: working. Okay, so let's say you decide to accept your fate, that work is life and life is work, and you're destined to spend it in a 6x4 office room. Any man can make a sacrifice for a worthy enough cause. As humans, yeah, we can work hard, but there should be a reward at the end of the tunnel. The dream of any Chinese youth is to buy a house, have a place to call their own, a place to raise a family in, a place that provides security for their future. So again, let's put you in the shoes of a young Chinese adult. You've got a job, not in the area that you studied, but that's okay. You're working 996, okay, that's okay, but you want to use that income to buy a house. So you go to the real estate agent and you see what you can buy. Real estate in China has been steadily increasing in price for the past 25 years. As the country has gotten wealthier through the adoption of capitalism, in turn, the house prices have gotten very expensive. Today, we're at a point where the average house price in a city like Shenzhen is 6.3 million yuan, 875,000 US dollars. Your income, however, is just 100,000 yuan a year, which is around the average wage a normal young adult in China gets. The price of the house is 60 times your annual salary. So if you spent all of your salary on the house every year and there was no such thing as interest payments, it would still take 60 years to pay it off. But of course, that's not realistic because there is such thing as interest payments, and if you have a 5% interest rate on the loan of 6.3 million, that is 315,000 yuan a year on just the interest alone. 315,000, that is 3 times your annual salary. You can't afford it. So you look to another city like Beijing for something more affordable, and house prices there are pretty much the same. And then you look to Shanghai and there's no difference. So how on earth do you afford a house? The answer is you don't. Unless you have wealthy parents or some sort of connection to the Chinese Communist Party, you accept the reality that you won't be able to buy a house in your lifetime. You don't have a job in the field you studied. You're working 9 to 9, 6 days a week. You can't buy a house ever. My guess is you're not going to be a very happy chappy, as they say. You might even go so far as saying, Banan, just let it rot. I completely give up. It's not worth trying anymore. But what's one thing that can cheer any guy up? A female, a potential life partner, someone you can build a family with, someone that can pick you up when you're down. So you put away the idea of being able to buy a house and you decide to look for a wife and have a family. And this is where the reality of living in China gets even more strange. China has a deep history that many of us in the West don't know about. 53 years ago, there was this weird law that they put in place. The population was growing extremely fast and the CCP were worried about this. So in 1979, China implemented a new policy to control this population growth. They made a law where each family could have a maximum of 1 child. They thought that this would help them achieve a more sustainable population. What they did not bargain for was the effect it would have on them 50 years later. To understand this effect, you need to understand the Chinese ethos. China has a deep-rooted Confucian culture. Confucius was the Chinese philosopher that lived about 2,500 years ago, and his ideas deeply shaped Chinese culture, politics, and way of life. In traditional Confucian thought, the family is the fundamental unit of society. Patrilineal descent, lineage through the male line, is essential. Male children are responsible for carrying on the family name, caring for aging parents, and performing ancestral rites.
Essentially, the family is the key, and the key to the family is the man.
The problem is when you mix this culture with a law that you can only have 1 child. The inevitable will obviously happen. Modern technology, as we all know, allows us to see what gender the child is before it is born. In the West, some people want a boy, other people want a girl. In China, they want that result to come out blue because they believe a boy will continue their family name. They're going to provide for the family economically. They're going to look after the parents. The girl will marry into a different family. So if the ultrasound shows it's a boy, they have the child, and if not, they don't. Because they can only have one, they want it to be male. Sadly, this was the story with too many Chinese families, and from 1979 to 2015, while the one-child policy was implemented, China saw more boys born than girls. This graph shows you the sex ratio at birth, boys to girls. The natural ratio is around 105 boys for every 100 girls born. The USA, Germany, and Japan are all around the natural ratio. India is the green line, which is well above the natural ratio, and then you have China well above India in the red line, where it shows since the one-child policy was placed, way more boys got born compared to girls. And this leads us to where we are today, where China has more men than women in their society. The United Nations statistics show that young adults have the worst gender imbalance amongst the ages in China. The ages between 20 to 24 have a ratio of 117 males per 100 females. But in some areas like Jiangxi, Henan, and Anhui, this number gets much worse. So if you're a young man in China today, there's hyper competition to get one of these girls. It's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination, but you need that high paying job. You need to be working that 996. You need status. You have to offer something in return for the girl's hand. Obviously, not everyone can have this, which is why you have a growing group of men in China who struggle or are unable to find wives, particularly in the rural areas.
As there are not enough women, the competition is fierce. Now you have to have a house in the city and money. You need more than 70,000 euros to convince a woman to marry you, which is too expensive for farmers like us.
In China, they refer to this phenomena as guangan, or bare branches, a term describing men who remain unmarried and thus do not grow a family tree. Do you think that these young men are happy? Or do you think some of them have just said, Banan, let it rot? And maybe some of them are so unhappy that they want to complain and speak out about this issue. In the West, they would certainly do this. But in China, Big Brother is watching you all the time, and if you step out of line, the whole country is going to know exactly what you've done. For the last 15 years, China has been developing a social credit system that is growing in sophistication. With modern technology, facial recognition, AI, banking data, and online footprints, the government is easily able to gather information on any one of its citizens. They aggregate the data that they have, and they give each citizen a score based on how well they are behaving. If we go to a city like Rongcheng, known as the model city for the social credit system, they give each adult a score of 1,000 points. They are then ranked into different tiers based on how many points that they have. AAA is the model citizen, AA is above average, B is watch list, and C is a serious trust breaker. You can think of it like the credit score system that we have in the West, except it's not with people's finances, it's with the people themselves and their behavior. To gain points, you have to do things that the CCP regard as good for society, but you lose points if you do what is perceived as bad for society. If you don't pay your fines, you lose 50 points. If you spread what's regarded as fake news, you lose 50 points. But if you do something like incite trouble online, you lose 100 points. If you do something criminal, you lose 100 points too. The people with high social credit scores get rewarded with discounts on utilities or rent, fast-track government services, easier access to housing loans. But the people with low social credit scores get punished with travel bans, like getting banned from flying or high-speed trains, slower internet speeds, exclusion from government contracts or jobs, public shaming such as their names and ID numbers displayed on public screens or apps. Put it this way, in the model city for China's social credit system, you don't want a low score, so you must be a good citizen, say the right things, be a good employee, and importantly, don't speak out against the ones who have power. So if you're a young man in China today and you've spent 4 years studying for a degree that's not useful, you're working 996, you can't buy a house, you can't get a wife, make sure that you don't speak out on these issues because it's going to hurt your credit score. So what do? You just do the alternative. You say, Bailan, let it rot.
Bailan,
Let it rot.
You choose to lie flat, or you call yourself the Rat People, all versions of the same movement.